And we are back. This is season 3, episode 16 of the F1 podcast. As mentioned in episode 15, we did our quick overview of the Canadian Grand Prix, which saw Max Verstappen win yet again. We're going to have fun with this next episode. As mentioned, myself, Tyler, and Spencer and Morgan had the opportunity to go this weekend to Montreal. Andrew is going to lead the questions for the team. I think these are some fun questions that we're going to get to. And this was a really exciting weekend, and we have a lot of stories to tell and a lot of funny moments. So let's get right into it. Andrew, you want to do the honors and lead this episode, but make sure if you want to hang out with us at the next Canadian Grand Prix, follow us on Instagram. We're at 53 followers, I think, at f1.podcast. Reminder, when we went in 2022, we had 95.
We called that growth.
Eric and I came up with some questions this afternoon that we want to bounce off the three of you, because you had such a great, from what we saw, looked like a fantastic experience at the track at Circuit de Villeneuve. But first and foremost, how was the general atmosphere at the track throughout the weekend? And did you feel safe attending the race? Because I know there was a record-breaking crowd this weekend, right? So security could be at a maximum in that case, but we want to make sure everyone had a great weekend. So what was the atmosphere like? What were the vibes like? And, did you feel safe at the track?
We did see a lot of changes, particularly as a fan compared to 2022. I think there was maybe a lot of staffing shortages or just lack of staff. So I did find more staff or more help around the track, particularly if you needed help to go somewhere. A lot more security that I personally found surrounding the track, and also in the metro stations, a number of, I think it was security and then Montreal police. So just managing, we had 300, I think, Tyler, you mentioned 385,000 fans out. 45. Okay. 345,000 this weekend. But I think, general atmosphere was amazing despite the weather. People were excited. People were great. I can definitely tell you more Aston Martin fans this year. And I can tell by the type of gear, because they bought it this year. I could tell 100% that there was a lot of people that bought gear specifically this year. A lot of Fernando Alonso's. I did see more Haas stuff, but yeah, there were still your Red Bulls. There were still your Ferraris. Ferrari is a fan favorite in Montreal itself. But overall, we felt great at the track. And, I think they did improve some parts of it. Cell phone service, number one, just so we can share all this content for you this weekend. So I didn't have to go on the top of the grandstand and put my phone out hoping to get a bar or two. But we were able to do it. And I felt generally it was an amazing experience.
Incredible weekend. If you ever have a chance to go to an F1 Grand Prix, please try and do that, because it is such a good experience on and off the track. A full weekend full of fun activities, a ton of entertainment. We saw Martin Garrix live, which was incredible, and he partied so hard that he actually broke the circuit and the entire music shut off. And so we were all there dancing, drinking in the sun until the music came back on. And so honestly, going to a place where everybody has this deep passion for something that we can all share together, the energy was off the charts. And so seeing our favorite drivers in person, me personally, this was my first time going. And so I was so happy I did this. I couldn't have gone with a better group, but it was so much fun, and I would definitely do it again.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I would say, just on your point, Spencer, is the people were just so nice and so friendly. I mean, doesn't matter what team you're rooting for. There were great conversations happening in the stands, in between sessions. We met somebody from the Netherlands who was there on a business trip, and they came up to me because I had my Max flag, of course, and he wanted to know why I supported Max. We had a good chat then. There were lots of people who came up from Toronto. We were chatting with them. Someone flew in from Calgary who had been going to the race for the last, I think he said 8 years he'd been going to the race. So he's been flying every single year to the circuit. So he was fired up to be there. So just a lot of really great people. Everyone was in a great mood. The vibes were off the charts, as Spencer said. So, I mean, really no complaints other than inflation has hit the beer prices. $11 for a small Heineken this year.
It was $11 this year? Okay,
$11.
Disgusting.
I was mad enough when it was $9 last year, because $9 for a 333 milliliter can is like absurd. That's a tall boy just about anywhere else. $11?
It's like we're like watching
Highway
a Scotiabank
robbery.
Arena right now.
Here's
My
what
visa bill is atrocious.
I don't even want to look.
I hope you
Did
got
you
that
end up
cash
just buying the
back.
cases of them? Did you
We
end up
should have.
just
You know
buying the
what?
cases?
I think we witnessed people who clearly have been to Grand Prix before, and then there are people who have been for the first time. The people sitting in front of us basically set up an entire picnic where they just kept
They
bringing out their
did.
own snacks, which I thought was such a big brain move. So kudos to them for actually having that experience to do so. They pulled up their own comfy chairs, and so they thought this through and they were ready for a full day of racing. I think for us going for the first time, yeah, it's an expensive day. Is it worth it? Absolutely. But yeah, it was definitely interesting to see what they were selling.
For context, I was with Spencer and Tyler in the hairpin, and then on Saturday, Sunday, I was with my dad in the Nicholas Latifi section. Guy had a full-on Yeti cooler in the middle of the staircase, and just kept opening it.
That's commitment.
Yeah, a lot of people weren't happy that it was blocking the staircase, but I can tell you that Yeti cooler was full of everything you can imagine. Last year, I did notice beer ran out significantly.
Oh yeah, we ran out of souls on Friday.
This
Yeah,
year,
so that was a similar situation this year.
really?
The Soul went quick. Yeah, the Heineken stayed.
I think it
for
made
that
it to
nice
Saturday
crisp
though. Like
lager.
Oh, they
Yeah.
learned from their mistakes.
By what? Buying one
Barely.
extra case?
I think a 2-4-pack was $240 or something like that.
Oh my god.
wow, that's basically the cost of a hat.
Yeah.
The merch was crazy expensive. So we were looking at t-shirts at $130, hats were $80, sweaters were like $270. And then you can get mini helmets, which depending on the driver starts from $400 to $600. So we did see a lot of people rocking the new merch. But yeah, I did get my little F1 car, so I'm gonna be making that a Christmas ornament. So I'm stoked about that. I wasn't out there buying a $300 sweater. So
And to add on to Spencer's point, we bought those cars outside of the track on, I think, was it on Crescent Street, I believe? And that was like $15 for a 148 model car without like a person in it. So, and even if like you can go to the stores away from the track and the price might be lower, like we did see some nice Ferrari shirts, like the 2023 shirts and with the names in the back for $85. Still a lot, but nothing like it was like at the track.
You brought up being outside the track, which I just wanted to know the energy in the city that entire weekend where people continued to rep their teams, continue to wear the merch, and party it up. And I think everybody, no matter how your team finished, was having a great time celebrating. So yeah, going out, hitting the town, it was alive. So I loved it.
I just have to say, like, the prices of that merch, are they expecting me to give them my firstborn child in exchange for a t-shirt?
Yes.
Erica, you and I went to Disney World this year, and this is an eerily similar feeling, right? Where it was just an absolute train wreck inside in terms of costing for merchandise. And then if you went to like a store outside of the world, it was like a tenth of the price.
Fraction. It's in
You can
why?
finance your hat. So in 4 equal payments.
Yeah, exactly. 4 equal payments of $29.99.
$9.99. But I know, Claire, you were asking about trying to smuggle stuff in. So last year when we showed up to the race, we had friends who had been a couple years prior, and it used to be that you were allowed to bring in outside alcohol. So you've always been allowed to bring in your own food. You still can, but previously you were able to do that. And so we just brought it in because that had previously been the rule, and they were like, you can't do this. And it's because with Drive to Survive, it's drastically changed what the culture and how like busy it is at these races. And so for the sake of trying to keep everyone safe and prevent people from overindulging as much as possible, they now don't let you bring in outside alcohol.
And if we can just remind our listeners that like one Canadian Grand Prix got canceled because of a booze dispute. They could not sign a contract.
Exactly. Molson and Labatt were duking it out, so the Canadian Grand Prix didn't go ahead one year. So we take our booze seriously down here.
But luckily, everything was kept under control. I didn't see anything get out of hand, so everyone was having a good time. I'm curious, if we are talking about the fans at the Canadian Grand Prix, we brought up Drive to Survive. I admittedly got into F1, or at least really got into it, once we saw this documented on Drive to Survive. I'm curious how many people at that Grand Prix, 345,000 people, were there starting to watch F1 after Drive to Survive and then before. I think we saw a lot of fans that had a lot of cool, historic kind of sports memorabilia from previous races in the 90s and in the 80s and the 2000s. I'm there as a relatively new fan compared to them, but I'm curious kind of what that is out there in the fans.
I have to imagine there's quite a few of them, but that kind of leads into, I guess, our next question. Like, you had some conversations with other fans, you saw people who've kind of gotten to the sport from all over, and we saw y'all kind of not just enjoying the race from the grandstands, but going to check out the fan zone. And so what were your favorite moments as you were kind of taking in the fan experience?
I think my favorite moment, I mean, the racing for sure. I mean, whether it's the wet qualifying and seeing again Valtteri try and traverse the lake that was the hairpin was pretty cool. And the race was awesome as expected. But I think outside the track was kind of cool to see the World Championship trophy in person. I didn't get a chance to see it last year, so seeing that was very cool, and to see, you know, Schumacher and Senna and all the greats and their signatures on the trophy, and then obviously Max the last couple of years. That was pretty cool to see in person. And then I think, yeah, just as Spencer said earlier, the vibe off the track, I think, was a different level this year. It was incredible. The passion spilled over to the streets of Montreal and to the bars every single night. And so that was cool to see.
Reminder, like, bars close at 3:00 in Montreal compared to here in Ontario, where everything closes at, well, some bars close at 2, some earlier, but I think they can close at 3. And so it's like you're all out day, like at the track, and then you could technically go all night if you want.
We confirmed
What do you mean
that
technically? You did.
We confirmed that in person that it does close at 3 a.m.
I like how you said technically, like you didn't do it.
Some of my favorite moments, I think walking the track was surreal. I think that's so cool to be there. And then you start walking it and you realize how big the track actually is and how long it is. Because I think we got a lot of steps in this weekend, and walking it definitely took some time. Seeing the paddock, seeing kind of everyone wrap up all the equipment, I think that was really cool. And yeah, on and off the track, a lot of entertainment. Martin Garrix was a ton of fun. Going into the city after was a ton of fun. And so, and I have to mention the different classes of racing as well. There was a big Ferrari challenge, which they brought out the newest Ferraris. I thought that was very entertaining. Just given that everyone has a stock car, which there was a lot of opportunities for overtaking, especially on the hairpin turn, which we witnessed. Some great action. I witnessed some crashes with some Ferraris, which is a little bit uncomfortable to watch. Such a beautiful piece of machinery goes straight into a wall. Luckily, every driver was okay from these crashes, but I want to mention that when you go to a Grand Prix, it's not just F1. There's a lot of racing all weekend long. There's practices, there's qualifying, there's races for different style of racing. So I think overall that's makes for a great weekend.
I have to ask, did they race Nissan Micras again this year?
That
was my favorite part of last year. There was a Nissan Altima racing series, and then after they raced Nissan Micras. So just these tiny little 2-seater cars absolutely whipping around the track.
I think a great point that you make, the three of you made, really was kind of the fan experience, in the sense that everyone was so passionate to talk about Formula One. It's really, I find for myself, you know, my friend group are not really into Formula One, so it's really hard to, you know, connect with them on Formula One and, you know, talk about it, right, without feeling that maybe it's just going upon deaf ears, or it's, you know, it's not something that they're as passionate about. But when you're able to have those conversations with other fans, I can only imagine what that, you know, that euphoric feeling that's like, that, or that enthusiasm is like, that whole weekend there, and being able just to discuss that.
We were at the Martin Garrix concert, and literally somebody had the Max Verstappen parking lot sign and was just like putting up like this. Also, Spencer, you and Tyler went to go grab a beer, but Martin Garrix FaceTime Lando Norris in during the set. So
how drunk was he?
We couldn't, it was like 30 seconds and we were too far back.
So speaking of, you know, because you talked about beer improvements, what big improvements did they make to the concessions overall for the weekend? And I see. Now that you've been there twice, or you know you've had the experience, what would you say your ideal weekend set view, your setup view would be? Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Like if you were to have to pick to choose where you want to be on Friday, what stand you want to be on Saturday, and what stand you would be on Sunday, what would your ideal weekend be like that?
If money wasn't an issue, it'd be the most expensive seat, which I would assume would be the Paddock Club, right above the pit lane. And then right beside it, parallel to that, is the starting straight, which I think you can also get a glimpse of the first chicane. So you would get so much action if you were to be sitting there. Also some shade. You'd have a roof above you, so if it pours rain, you are sitting like royalty in your fancy suits. So that would definitely be my first pick.
I think for me is the Friday I spent at the hairpin was a lot of fun. And, Saturday, Sunday was being with my dad in the Nicholas Latifi section, like literally the first turn. So our viewpoint, and the great thing about this episode is you're going to see all our pictures and everything in it. So, please tune into YouTube to watch it. But unless you general admission, like the problem with the track is if you have general admission tickets, I think they definitely limit where you can really go, or like there was definitely a lot more. I heard a couple of podcasts talk about how if you have a GA ticket, like especially on race day, like good luck trying to find an area of like a glimpse of the track. Mind you, for those that want to go next year, Friday is the lighter day. Saturday it picks up, and make sure you give your time on Sunday to go through the transit system if you want to catch the driver's parade at 12 o'clock, because it will be much busier on the Sunday. So it depends like what your comfort level is. If you want to go when there's nobody there, Friday. You want to see the most action, Sunday's your best bet.
I know I had a few friends who went to Coda, and I know even the GA tickets there, like there's so much space around the track for people to kind of like bring their own lawn chairs, sit down a little bit. Like you'll see that at some of the other circuits as well, where people are just kind of like on a hillside that banks down toward the track so that you have space. And that doesn't really exist at Gilles Villeneuve. Like it's a small island. And so really they've tried to maximize what they can in terms of placing grandstands. And because it's so narrow, they don't really have that kind of space for people in GA. And even then, it's really not great visibility either. So unfortunately, like it is a little less expensive to go to than some other races, I would say. But definitely, I think not one of those ones where you're like, wow, I can't believe I got to see all this and it only cost me $90.
I think it being on an island also creates bigger crowds, tighter crowds. And so getting in and out of these races was a little tight. If you're claustrophobic, I think that might be a little bit of an issue, as crowd control was tough to navigate, especially getting on the subway. But luckily, this is the Canadian Grand Prix. Everybody is super polite and is civil about it. But when you're soaking wet, standing in a huge crowd of thousands of people trying to pack into the subway, that's an interesting experience, but something you just got to have a lot of patience for.
And I think definitely on race day, there's a lot of tracks that purposely try to put artists, so it just can relieve. I talked about this today in the office. Don't put as much pressure on the transit lines just to kind of hold people back, because obviously Sunday would have the most people. So like literally we felt like I was at a high school party or a high school concert with Martin Garrix again. Like it literally did feel like a nice TBT throwback Thursday after the race.
Now, where do you feel like they can make things better? Like if you were to go back again, kind of have like a more idealized experience, like be it, I know you talked about like things were great in the city, like the vibe was awesome. It kind of came alive. Sounds like things were a little tight and squishy. Maybe, your suggestion is for prices to decrease, but like what would you think notch up that experience for you?
That's it. That's the only one. It's just $5 beers would be
do a barrel roll.
Spot. Everything else, I wouldn't change. I had a 10 out of 10 weekend. Once again, being the first time going to a Grand Prix, it was everything I expected and more, and just super entertaining. Good friends, good entertainment, fast cars. Can't wish for more.
Good piece of advice I will tell people if they are going to be attending the next Canadian Grand Prix. When it comes to the transit, there are options. For example, you can buy your weekend pass, or you can buy a 3-day pass, or you can buy single tickets. You might want to go there on the Friday, buy your weekend pass or your technically your 3-day pass, because there's just a caveat, the weekend pass doesn't start till 4:00. So for example, Spencer and I bought a ticket on the way there to the track, and then we had to wait like 45 minutes already in a 45-minute line just to buy our weekend pass. And it's like, that's the worst place to buy. There's not enough machines to accommodate people. So buy your tickets, buy the 3-day pass, don't buy the weekend pass.
I would echo everything both of you guys said. I think navigating the metro efficiently is a key to having a stress-free weekend. I also think I probably wouldn't change anything as well. I found it to be an incredible experience. Obviously, this is my second time going to the Grand Prix. I will definitely be going again in the future. If there was one thing, I know this one is, very difficult because of logistics and things like that. I would love to see a bit more diversity in the support races. It would be amazing if they were able to somehow get Formula 3 or Formula 2 to come over and do one of the support races there. Because, we go to some of these other events. Australia had both F2 and F3 as support events. That would be really, really cool to see. Not that I didn't love the Ferrari Challenge, because as Spencer said earlier, there were a lot of overtakes, a lot of crashes, a lot of really interesting stuff happened, but it would be kind of cool to see some of the young up and coming talent and promote them over here, because a lot of those support races happen in Europe. And again, I get that that's a logistical, a cost saving thing, because it's not cheap to ship those cars across the Atlantic, especially those series aren't making as much money as Formula One. But as a fan, if there was something on my wish list, it would be kind of cool to see some of these other up and coming talents in F2 and F3.
You got to give what the people want. I would love to see the Porsches race at the Canadian GP. Ripping GT2 RSs around that track would be a dream. The Ferrari Challenge was incredible to watch, but I totally agree with you. Seeing some other cars out there would be a lot of fun.
Did they do the Porsche races last year, or was it also?
I can't remember. Challenge? They definitely had Ferraris, but they may have had the Porsche Super Cup as well.
Yeah.
But I can't remember.
Well, if I'm adding a bucket list, it's F1 Academy, because they're supposed to be racing alongside F1 next year. And that would be real cool if during kind of the inaugural pairing, they got them there. Again, like you said, logistical, money, transpo, all that fun stuff. But like, come on. If you can get the cars to Australia, you can get them to Canada. I'm sorry. That's just
true. Good point. I didn't think of that. It's got to be the same price, right? It can't be that much more expensive. Australia is pretty far from Europe, so
yeah. I don't know who needs to hear me. Make it happen. Make it so. Snack.
So
it is.
So based on social media, though, we saw that y'all had a lot of cool experiences, particularly with a lot of celebrities meeting this week. So can you talk about the celebrities that you met and the stories that came up on it? Because it looked incredible.
Spencer has to tell the Pierre Gasly story, because
he needs to tell us about his new BFF.
Yeah, he was the main character in that interaction.
Literally being replaced. I don't like this.
Yes, I'm sorry, Richie. Yeah, I got a new best friend. His name is Pierre Gasly. He races for Alpine, and we had a cool encounter this weekend. We were taking a nice walk through the streets of Montreal. We were walking up to the Ritz-Carlton, which we got word that the drivers were staying there. There was a big crowd waiting for these drivers to come out. We happened to be walking there at this strange time where we were just trying to pass through, and we happened to just walk through this big crowd, end up on the red carpet, and realize that Pierre Gasly is coming out at the exact same moment. Now, I recognize that Pierre Gasly was right beside us, but then I immediately realized we are the only people there with Pierre Gasly, and realized that we're probably not supposed to be there. And so my instincts was looking around, and I'm like, okay, what security guard is gonna come body us right now? But yeah, once it kind of cooled down, we walked by and got a nice smile and thumbs up from Pierre Gasly. So yeah, that was a very cool moment.
And it was really interesting because I was walking ahead and you were with my dad and with Tyler and Morgan, and it's just like all I hear is people just yelling Pierre, 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 and I literally pulled out my phone ready. I mean, he did give me thumbs up in the card too, but like I'm not that exciting compared to your story, and I can't wait till you see the video. The photo and the YouTube video. It's legendary.
I appreciate you snapping that photo. That's a pretty cool photo, and so let's post it up on the F1 podcast Insta.
You're in Montreal. There's a lot of French people or people who speak French. So simply shouting Pierre may not be enough to trigger anyone to think that it's a celebrity going by. They may just think it's their pal walking down the street.
Is it Pierre? Is it Pierre Gasly?
Pierre Gasly, as he shows up on a Vespa to qualifying, and Danny Rick's calling him out.
For those that know, Kym Illman, who is a photographer who is based out of Australia and takes a lot of photos of the Grand Prix, was doing a fan meetup, the hairpin section after FP1. Obviously, there was issues with FP1, so I didn't know if it was still going to go on, but there was about 100 people that got to meet up with him after. And so we kind of asked questions and he just kind of talked to everyone. I had the coffee book that I bought last year for my dad. So he immediately, instead of stopped conversation, says, "Oh, I know this book." And then he kind of showed the book and then he signed it. And that was really nice of him. My dad couldn't be there, but so you'll see the photo there. And it's actually funny, the next day, as I'm walking to a specific, because since we were at Nicholas Latifi section, we got like a shuttle to go there. And as we're waiting for the shuttle, I saw Kym Illman walk by with his camera. And I said, "Hey, Kym, thanks again for signing my photo. How are you doing?" And he looked so sad because how wet it was on the track. And he was just like, "I'm wet and I'm cold." And then I said, "Oh, Kym, by the way, this is my dad." And he says, "Hi, Dad." And he just kept walking. He had no interest of hanging out with wanting to go because how cold it was. So with Spencer already meeting one driver, on our shuttle on the way to basically where our section, so we had to go on a boat to kind of pass by this famous staircase that it goes across the water, and a lot of the drivers will park on the left side of this staircase, and the video will explain it, or on this one side of the island, and then they'll walk on this famous staircase to go basically towards the paddock gates or the paddock club. So I saw Carlos Sainz drive his beautiful Ferrari down there. And like some girl had a really nice camera, and so she took a couple of photos, and it was definitely Carlos Sainz.
Did he park in the middle of the parking lot?
He impeded everyone else in the parking lot.
I mean, yeah, his couple of his team, the team were like waiting on the road to kind of tell him which parking spot to go in. So yeah, we'll go with impeding traffic there.
He's definitely the guy in a parking lot who goes horizontally across like 3 parking spots or directly in between 2 of them because he doesn't want anyone to ding the side of his car.
You lose.
I can see it.
He's that guy.
If I had that Ferrari, I would do that too.
I think though, John got the photo of the weekend.
Woo!
Meeting British frickin' food royalty, the man, the myth, the legend, Gordon Ramsay. Oh my God, Richie, what was that like?
So we had technically access where, like, as our tickets had access to basically take this shuttle over. So they would drop you off at a certain section where all the paddock, not so much the paddock, but like all these executive suites were to kind of, and you were allowed to technically walk towards the Nicholas Latifi section there. So the video will show, so we were technically kind of on this like little laneway or this driveway. So executives were walking by, people with VIP badges, and like I had nothing. I literally had a GoPro and just me. So I was kind of just walking back and forth. And so I was able to walk all the way up to the paddock gates, and I saw a couple of like intense security there, and just being like 10 feet away from the paddock swipe. And so people have to swipe their paddock pass, and then their face comes on to the TV there to indicate, like, to show that it's there. So as I'm walking kind of back to my seat, I see Gordon Ramsay walking towards me with his PR person. So I say, "Hello, Gordon, how are you doing?" He's like, "I'm good. How are you?" I said, "Good." And I said, "Do you have a chance for a photo real quick?" It was like kind of like that awkward 3 seconds. It's like 1, 2, 3. "Yeah, sure. Quick. So then his PR guy took a photo with me, and I was freaking out on my phone. I'm like, I just don't know what I'm doing. And the guy's like, "I'll take it for you." So he takes it for me. Very nice. Said, "Welcome to Canada," whatever. Post that on Instagram. Didn't realize how much that was going to blow up. As we're out that night, he liked the photo, or his team liked the photo.
That's so cool.
So, I mean, I DM'd him. He didn't respond. But like, Gordon, if you're listening, you're always welcome on the F1 podcast.
Get him on the pod.
Richie, not gonna lie, I'm huge, like, I love Hell's Kitchen. I love Gordon Ramsay every show that he does, and I just was so jealous when I saw that photo. I wish I was in your shoes at that point.
He didn't call me an idiot sandwich. He didn't tell me my chicken was raw or dry. So like, I guess I was in his good books for a solid 10 seconds, maybe.
To be fair, he probably would if you cooked chicken for him, but I think you dodged a bullet there.
Hey, now I'm not that bad of a cook, but whatever. I think that one of the big things about like you want to meet people at an F1 track. Is it possible? Yes. Is it hard? Yes, because how big the track is and how big not only the track but cell service and a lot of things can come into play. So the guys from the Dirty Side of the Track podcast, Brian and Rob, been trying to meet up with them all weekend, and just like schedules didn't work, and they were busy on Sunday in the paddock. They got access there, and it was great to see that. So as we're at the Martin Garrix concert, I get a message from one of them saying, "Oh, we're at the Heineken Star." So as we're trying to leave the event, I get this message, and I immediately see their paddock shirt. So I went and gave them a nice big hug and to like introduce them to like Tyler and Spencer. And then I accidentally hit their beer, and their beer spilled everywhere. And I just gave them the big old Canada sorry. So Brian and Rob, sorry. I owe you a beer next year when you guys come. So I appreciate it. And I also want to give a shout out to the JJF1 podcast, random to him at the meetup. And he also bought me a beer, which $11 beer. So thank you.
No, Tyler, do you have any fun experiences with celebrities this weekend by chance?
I mean, I had the shared Pierre one with Spencer, but not to the same degree, because Spencer and Pierre shared a moment. But that was still cool because as Spencer mentioned, we were literally within arm's length of him, and nobody else was on the red carpet, and everyone was taking photos. So I got the celebrity experience of having flashes at you from every direction. I did see Toto Wolf going into the track, so that was cool. He gave us a wave. But otherwise, just a good weekend on track. Lots of good action, a lot of good times on and off the track. Montreal is an amazing city, and even better during F1 weekend. It was just alive all weekend, every single night. Everybody was in a good mood, so it was a lot of fun. Nothing but positive experiences.
All in all, it sounds like the three of you guys had a wonderful weekend. I imagine Morgan had an amazing weekend as well. But it was fun getting the phone call conversation from you guys on Saturday night when Eric and I joined at the bar. It was just a unique atmosphere to see. Everybody was so lively, and the amount of F1 merchandise that was being shown in the bar, it had that full experience. So, so happy that you three were able to indulge in that all weekend. And I know the credit card bill might be hurting, but it was definitely worth the experience.
We definitely missed you guys out there. Please mark your calendars for the next one. No overlapping events.
You will have to put several brick walls in front of me to prevent me from attending next year. And even then, I might still Kool-Aid man my way through them. So
Likewise.
I'm putting in a lock in my calendar as we speak.
I've already been looking up hotels as we've been on this phone call.
How is that even possible?
It's not. Everything's telling me it's too far in advance, but I'm still trying.
Well, on that note, thank you so much, everybody, for listening to Season 3, Episode 16 of the F1 Podcast. This was our follow-up podcast to Season 3, Episode 15, which is now live on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and XReach's YouTube channel. Please go listen to that before listening to, can't really say that now because you've already listened to this, but please check away. Please listen to that as well as we review the Canadian Grand Prix. Again, thank you to my co-hosts, Jonathan Ricci and Erica Hollingsworth, for a great episode again. And also thank you so much to the two friends of the show, Tyler and Spencer. You two have been an absolute joy and treat to be a part of this podcast. Again, an absolute privilege to have you both on for these back-to-back episodes. And with that said, please follow the F1 Podcast on Instagram. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and XReach's YouTube channel. Especially watch this episode on YouTube, as Ricci will have all the photos from the F1 experience that the team had this weekend in Montreal. So you can indulge yourself as if you were there and kind of give you some motivation for going to next year. And we will be back in a couple weeks' time to do our review of the Austrian Grand Prix. We'll see if Max Verstappen and Red Bull can make it 10 wins in a row. I think for the first time in the entire in their constructors' history. So maybe another history event at the Austrian GP. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.